All right. So, welcome. We are here with Cornelius Freeman, an amazing man when it comes to style.
Thank you.
With clothing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
This is Raul's Lounge, the El Presidente.
God bless it.
El Presidente. Thank you for taking the time to educate us
Thank you.
on your knowledge and your experience when it comes to the way a man dresses and presents himself before others.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time, and I remember the way you were dressed. You stood out. And that led me to asking, like, wow, I love the threads. And people sometimes forget that the way we look, the way we present ourselves, we stand out.
Yeah.
So tell us, Cornelius, tell us about your story, how you got into the suits, the beautiful flavors. I mean, even what you're wearing right now in great colors.
Yeah, I thank you for that, for all of that, and thank you. And I'm honored to be here and to be here in Raul's Lounge, El Presidente.
El Presidente.
Beautiful space. I love being here, and thank you so much. I'm grateful, man. It's been a journey, and what you see now is pretty much a culmination of that journey. And so, man, I'm excited in terms of like how this thing started. For those that don't know, I'm a celebrity tailor. I make suits, and I'm even proud to say one of my celebrity clients happened to be Raul.
El Presidente, that's right.
So super excited about that and what you've got coming as we kind of forge ahead and develop this relationship from tailor to client. And that's what it is. Tailor to client relationship is one that's very, very close. And so there's no surprise that we also hit it off. To be quite transparent, I don't take clients if I don't like them. we're just at a point where God has blessed us, and I don't have to work with people if I don't particularly are not fond of them. And that's not to say that anyone's a bad person. Sometimes it just doesn't click.
Yes.
And so thankfully this definitely clicked.
Absolutely.
So pleasure meeting you as we did and forged ahead. I've always kind of been into suits, growing up in the city of Memphis. My father, who's a bishop in the church back home, and all of his brothers, my uncles, they're all pastors and across denominational lines. And long story short, all of the men I admired growing up, they all wore suits. And so I've always associated suits with a high value man. And so obviously as I grew into a man, I wanted to emulate that which I saw and felt like was a high value man. I spent 10 years in corporate banking. I say sometimes when I'm speaking to different groups and sales organizations, I say to them, I thought I was attracted to banking when in actuality, I was just attracted to the suits. The pinstripe suits, the briefcases, the Mont Blanc ink pens, I was just attracted to the accoutrements, if you will, of banking and corporate America and what that meant. I just held it on for 10 years until I decided that wasn't my path.
Beautiful. You know, it's interesting because you mentioned the church, and I grew up going to many churches, and yes, I would see the men dress up, and it was a beautiful thing.
Sure.
Now, I am, call me old-fashioned, but I believe that there's a certain style for different situations. If I'm going to the beach, I'm not gonna wear jeans and a polo shirt to the beach because that's not the attire. If I'm going to church, the way that I grew up, and it seems from the same way as yourself, we saw men dress up. If I'm going to a funeral, there's a certain way. I'm not gonna go in shorts and flip-flops like if I was going to the beach.
Sure.
How would you say the men today are dressing for certain situations, whether it's an interview, job interview, going to the beach, going on a date, going out with their spouse, just gonna go hang out with some friends?
Sure.
How are men dressing these days?
Sure. And you're right on point when you say, first of all, there is a code, if you will, a particular way in which you are addressed that makes it appropriate in every setting. So that's the first rule of the gentleman in terms of getting dressed. The first rule is you want to make sure that you're showing complete respect for the dress code of the event you're attending.
Correct.
So that's in the easiest terms, never underdress. In some cases, you can get away overdressing, but never underdress. It's disrespectful to the people and the event organizers and the people who put this event on for you to show up in a way or dressed in a way that's not respectful to the thing that you're showing up for.
Yeah.
Shows a lack of preparation, shows a lack of discipline, and like I said, utterly a lack of respect. Now, with that in mind, you then want to move to step number 2, or idea number 2, which is you want to make sure you give the best version of whatever that appropriate dress is.
Yes.
The best version for yourself. You're not necessarily competing with those that are in the room, but you're competing necessarily with the versions of yourself that exists. We all have a version that is somewhat lazy, relatively speaking. We all have a version that's right on par. We all have a version of going what extra mile would constitute for us individually. So you want to go the best version of yourself within the confines of whatever that particular situation calls for.
Correct.
In terms of dress, if that makes sense.
Yes.
In terms of what guys are doing now, I think, my humble opinion, I think it's a combination of not knowing these aforementioned rules that I just talked about, in addition to some of them not caring. And I think between the combination of the two, my father hates when I say this, my colleagues hate when I say this part, it's our generation's fault.
Okay.
I have a 23-year-old son. If I had never taught him, if I had never shown him the ways of a gentleman, and that's when I say it wouldn't totally be his fault, because I wouldn't have taught him. And I think as things have become more relaxed and people in general have become more relaxed, we look for more and more excuses to justify why we're being lazy in our dress.
Yes.
I've heard all kinds of things in the corporate sector, in the business community, out in the marketplace. I've heard people talk about, I like to dress like my clients, and my clients are wearing slacks and a polo. I want to wear slacks and a polo. I had a multi-millionaire client say this one thing, and I never forgot it. He says, absolutely. He said, I hear people on these so-called gurus talk about how Sam Walton, Mark Zuckerberg, and all of these guys, those of us who've attained a certain level of wealth, we don't dress up. We wear jeans and t-shirts, and we walk into board meetings, however we want to walk into. And he says very plainly, he says, absolutely, because I've earned the right to. He said, but the people that work for me, they absolutely better be in a suit.
Interesting.
They absolutely better come and show respect for my organization. They better not walk in here with jeans and a t-shirt. And then speaking of those guys, talk about, like I mentioned, Mark Zuckerberg for example. I asked the group I was speaking to, I said, has anyone in this room ever seen Mark Zuckerberg in a suit? I was kind of looking. Maybe a couple of guys raised their hand. And I said, you've seen him in a suit. Do you remember where he was when you saw him in a suit? He said, yeah, he was in some kind of court. I said, exactly. He was at the Senate congressional hearing. You know why? Because even Mark Zuckerberg, with all the money and the wealth he's attained, you know what he knows? That when it matters, you better put it on.
And you just mentioned court. If we have a court appearance,
Sure.
we are not going to show up in a pair of jeans and a white t-shirt looking like Fonzie.
No. And you know why? Because we wouldn't disrespect the sanctity that the courtroom calls for. So all I'm saying is to take that same idea and concept and put that in every event and every set of doors that you're going to walk into.
Correct. I totally agree. Now, let's talk about the young men these days. As they're getting out of high school, They're preparing for the real world.
Sure.
They're going to go on job interviews. What would your recommendation be for them? But even before that, we're going to go ahead and have just a little bit of Yamazaki, because I had the privilege of going to Japan this past summer.
Wow.
And I picked up this bottle.
Wow.
And we're going to drink this neat. This is some great stuff. And Yamazaki's some great stuff. Wow. So I don't think I've shared this with anybody yet. So you're the first cheers guy. So these young men, because we see how they dress with their jeans.
Sure.
Showing the boxers, which I'm personally not a fan of. I mean, and we know where that exactly comes from.
Sure.
But going into a job interview, meeting the father of the girl you're dating, how do you present yourself?
That's why I commend you for this podcast, for example. I'll tell you what I mean by that. What these young men are doing that you mentioned, unfortunately, they're emulating who it is in their realm that they look up to.
Yes.
In certain sectors, in certain geographic regions. I was just speaking to a group last night in Winter Park here in Florida. And I told the people in my introduction, I'm from Memphis, specifically a more dangerous part of Memphis known as Memphis.
Been there. Been to Memphis.
So I understand the dynamic. So in South Memphis, for example, it's very, very common for, in the hood, as we call it, for members of the neighborhood to be idolized in some sense. Because for some of the young men that are in that neighborhood, this gentleman that they're emulating is the closest form of material success that they've ever witnessed with their own eyes.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
And so now, innately or subconsciously, the young man now grows up wanting to attain the things he's seen that gentleman attain. So he now wants to look like him. He wants to drive like him. He wants to dress like him. And so what I started this segment off and this answer, I started by saying that's why I commend you for doing podcasts and other avenues like this, because it gives young men who have ordinarily no other idea or no other semblance or vision of what success or what they call material success actually looks like. If we don't do things like this, we don't show them something different. When I was growing up in the neighborhood, of course, I knew better because my father taught me, but in the neighborhood, it was common knowledge that there was only two ways to get out of the hood legally, professional athlete or rapping.
Okay.
And so they're again emulating those whom they've seen and have assigned and associated a certain level of material success to. And that's what is happening.
Yep. I grew up in the Bronx in New York. So like you, I know about the hood.
Very.
But what I hear you saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lack of fathers with these young men. A father figure that can teach them and train them. See, I started dressing up because I saw the way I saw my father dress up.
Sure.
And I rarely saw my father in jeans. And I appreciated and I liked the way my father looked.
Sure.
So I took that upon myself that when I started high school, I just dressed more with khakis.
Sure.
Not so much with sneakers.
Sure.
And yes, I stood out. But when I put on my clothes, I feel good about myself.
Yes.
And I want to help these young men to feel good about the way they look, whether they're slim, whether they're overweight. Once you put on that jacket, you feel good.
Great.
It gives you that confidence when you go into that job interview that I could conquer the world. And this person wants to hire me.
Absolutely. And you touched on something that you are right. There is somewhat a lack of father figures in general. I don't necessarily, and this is maybe an unpopular opinion because I've lived some of it myself. I don't believe necessarily that it's because there is a lack of desires from fathers. I don't believe necessarily that overall or generally speaking, and let me just side note, when we say generally speaking, all of us, we're making the generality based on what we've seen. So I understand it if a listener or if a viewer has a different opinion because they've seen something different. As for me, you ask me, my opinion is that there has been an overall dilution of the importance of the role of a father figure in minority households.
Yeah, that's a great podcast for it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to put that out. I do believe, like you alluded to, I do believe there is a lack of father figures in minority homes. I do not believe overall, generally speaking, that is the result of men not wanting to be fathers.
Okay. I could see that.
I do, however, believe it is the result of an attempt, and to some degree, largely successful attempt, to dilute the importance of father figures in minority homes. I'll put it that way.
Amen.
Like you said, that's another podcast. I got specific examples.
We'll be doing many more podcasts.
Yes.
So help me. I'm a young man. I can't really afford to buy an expensive suit.
Sure.
Right. I've even told young men, go to Goodwill.
Yes.
You'd be surprised.
Yes.
Absolutely. And they have done that, and you can't tell
Absolutely.
that comes from Goodwill.
Sure.
So what are some options that some young men will have when it comes to dressing up for an interview? Do I wear jeans also? Do I wear sneakers? What could I get away with so that I can land this job?
Okay. Great question. First, I want to say if a young man is listening to this or viewing this, or someone is that has access to a young man you know needs this information, the first thing I would say that if in fact that young man did not grow up with someone around him that would teach him in these ways, the first thing he needs to discover is who close to him can help him.
Okay.
Can help mentor him, can help guide him through. Who close to him, who in his family, who connected to his family, connected in his community that he can go to and say, hey, for example, Mr. Raul, I know you don't know me, but I see you coming to the Publix. I'm looking to go and do X, Y, Z. Is there any way possible I can have a phone conversation with you? I want to be sure that when I go for this interview, I'm wearing the right thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because in and of yourself, you not only don't know some things, but here's what's more critical. You do not know what you do not know.
Correct.
You don't even know that you're missing certain elements that'll allow you to have an advantage when you actually do go for this job interview. You don't know necessarily you're being judged about or how you shake the interviewer's hand, whether or not you're making appropriate eye contact. What is appropriate?
Let's show how we do that. I'm Raul Otero.
My name's Cornelius Freeman. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, so that's
how it's done.
That's literally something that's not organic. You have to learn these things. And so if you don't have access to that information, that's the first thing I would say. Seek to get access to that information by identifying someone that can help you get there.
Yes.
In terms of what to wear, that's going to hinge on a couple of different things. The main thing, though, is going to be Raul, what is the actual job function?
True.
What am I going to be interviewed for? These are questions you need to figure out. You need to ask yourself, what message would I like to send to the person that will be interviewing me? Because we're all going to send a message when we walk into a room. And since we know that that's inevitable, we might as well, and I tell my clients this all the time, you may have heard me say it, since we know we're going to send a message, we might as well be deliberate about that messaging. Who writes a letter and doesn't care what they put on the paper?
Yeah.
We wouldn't do it. We call that asinine. The same thing is true in our dress. We know we're going to write a letter that we're going to be wearing. Why not pen that letter using words that's going to properly convey the message we want to send to the reader?
Yes.
It's that simple. And so once you've identified that, then you can start to curate a look, put pieces together. Now, in terms of where to go and what to do, obviously, like you mentioned, Goodwill is something somewhere that you can go to. I would identify Goodwills in areas where there's a higher mortality rate than others, because these are places where they're going to receive garments and goods coming in from a house from someone who may have been deceased.
Good point.
And instead of doing an estate sale and opening up the garage door and having people come to, some family members and survivors of deceased, especially in wealthy families and units, they just rather give the stuff away and be done with it. Let's close this chapter on our life.
Yeah.
Uncle Junior was great and was great to us and left his mark on the earth. Now it's time to leave our mark. Let's move on. And so now the Goodwill in some of these more affluent areas, Salvation Army in some of these more wealthy areas, they now have goods and products that you wouldn't normally see at another location.
Correct.
So that's one thing. And then there are places like Walmart,
Yes.
Target. There's a house brand at Target. I covered this on a video I did a year or two back. There's a house brand at Target that's sold. It's part of their house brand. The name is called Goodfellow. So for those listening or watching this, Goodfellow is a solid brand. They make a quality product, especially for that particular price point. So that's a great option. They're not too expensive. It's not dirt cheap, but it's definitely nothing close to what you'd find in a Macy's or Dillard's. Definitely nothing you'll find at the next level at Hugo Boss and Bloomingdale's. It's right in that cusp where, again, a mentor can help you through that.
Yeah.
Someone that you've identified that can help you and take you on this journey and help you get to where you're trying to go.
Shopping at a Ross.
Absolutely.
Even Ross.
Another great idea.
And by no way are these companies giving us anything.
No.
They're not sponsoring us in any way, shape, or form. But also for men like you and I, the older gentlemen, when we have a suit that maybe doesn't fit us anymore, we could pass it on.
Sure.
I've done that
Sure.
as well. And it's received very, very well. Like, I think this would look great on you. I was taught very early in my age that having a navy blue jacket or a dark black jacket,
Sure.
sports jacket, it's something that every male should have in his closet. Because you could get away with wearing a pair of jeans and some sneakers with it and even a white t-shirt and look cool.
Right. Right.
Because you want to represent if you're going on a date for the first time. I remember I've been married now for 21 years.
Oh, congrats.
Well, thank you. Happily married. But I remember,
She's amazing.
my first date with my wife.
Yeah.
I wanted to smell good.
Yes.
I wanted to look. I had my fresh haircut. I can tell you exactly what I was wearing.
Yes. Yes.
I had black. This was in the winter in New York. I had black slacks. I had a cashmere Smurf blue fat turtleneck with my haircut.
Yes.
And I remember I was wearing Chanel No. 5 Platinum because she was gonna smell
Yes.
this great aroma with what I was wearing.
Sure. Sure.
And I remember it to this day.
Sure. Sure. I love that. I think that, you know, and back to your original point, I think that men like us who frequently wear suits, we all have suits we either have grown out of in terms of size and fit, as well as suits we've grown out of in terms of I'm no longer wearing that style. Doesn't necessarily mean it's out of style. Sometimes I'm just wearing my clothing a little different. The next batch of garments that I'm ordering and receiving for myself personally, the pants, the trousers are cut a little differently than the ones I'm wearing now. And so, again, just a change in style. If we do a better job of getting these garments directly into the hands of people, and I love Goodwill and United Way and Salvation Army, and they do an amazing job. When I give to those organizations, I don't get to see or know what impact I'm actually making.
True.
And so I even want to, and I'm spilling the beans for the first time publicly on your podcast, but I even want to partner with men by way of an organization. I want to develop a nonprofit of some kind, something I intend to get off the ground this year. I don't know how, but I just know I'm going to start it, where I want to partner not just to get aid and help in this way to young men. There's also a group of men who have been incarcerated because of a wrong decision, who have didn't have all the chances that have been afforded to some of the rest of us. And they've served their time and completely rehabilitated. They've owned that mistake. And now they're trying to get back into the marketplace. Well, they've been incarcerated for the last 10, 12 years. Things have changed. They've not had a phone. If they had one in jail, it was a flip phone. And all these sorts of things. Technology has advanced. And so knowing how to dress and having access to suits to go on a job interview and things of that nature, a lot of them just don't have that access. So I'd like to partner with organizations who already their theme or their purpose is to help men coming out of these situations. I want to partner with them and then have my clients like you and so on and so forth. We collect garments and let these men, and we go spend time. I want to bring in a barber. I want to bring in people to help them physically, aesthetically be able to go out. Now, the organization we partner with, they'll be responsible for, I'm sure they'll help them in terms of job skills and things of that nature. But in terms of the aesthetic portion of it,
correct,
I think we can be a resource.
I agree. Even as I was saying, been married for 21 years, I still want to look my best. And it's important for people to understand when either they've been incarcerated or whatever it may be, that a nice fresh cut, clean look, nice and ironed, not wrinkled.
Right.
It makes us feel good.
It does.
I can take two young men to an event, one that works at Burger King and one that works at McDonald's, give them some nice suits, and the folks at that event will never know where they were. I remember the movie Titanic.
Yes.
DiCaprio, how he fit in once he had that tuxedo.
Yep.
He was able to fit in with those men and those women because he felt confident.
Yes.
And dressing well, I believe, does give us confidence. Now, one of the things some of us have been able to afford something a little bit more classy, more expensive. Not to say that it's bad for those that haven't been able to. Maybe they will get there later on in the future. And I remember going through the process with you with the fitting, which was phenomenal. Now, I've done a fitting, and I'm not going to say the name of the local store that a lot of men go to. And the fitting experience with you and them is night and day. Night and day. So if...
We hope so.
Yeah. If you could afford it, treat yourself. Treat yourself to something that I've earned this.
Sure.
I deserve this.
Sure.
I learned from a friend of mine that passed away not too long ago just having, I remember he had a suit, he had his name in I was like, wow, that's nice. That's nice. Having the initials on his shirt, I was like, wow, that's classy.
Right.
That's hot.
Right.
And I copied that from him. And I'm like, that's hot.
Yeah.
I like that. So a lot of my shirts now, I have my initials, which I have my initials on there. And then even with the garments, the name is there.
That's right.
It's who I am. So if somebody's gonna get the suit later on, they might have to remove the name.
Or they may. I've seen it to that point. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've seen gentlemen receive custom and bespoke garments as a gift that someone else owned and wore, like in that example you used, and they were fine keeping the name in there. In honor of the gentleman who gave, they were so thankful and grateful and appreciative.
Nice.
They kept the name in there because they were appreciative to that extent.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to encourage young men, even older men who have not been there yet, to be able to reach out to us.
Sure.
Give us your information. We're also going to put it on the tag with this podcast so people can reach out to you.
Sure.
Now, for those that could definitely afford something nice, great, yes. But even if you just want some information.
That's right.
Because even combinations of colors and things like that sometimes it's hard for us to figure out. Like, you're able to pull off those beautiful colors. Some men don't know how to combine these colors.
Right.
What kind of socks. Now, I'm wearing this. And this is to represent more of my Denver Broncos making the playoffs this year.
You guys, okay.
Go Broncos.
Yes.
But what can we reach you?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do, and I've got social media all across the board, but the easiest thing to do is to send a text to the phone number 407-223-5291. That's 407-223-5291.
Okay.
The first step in this process is to schedule what we call a free 15-minute discovery call. So myself or a member of my team will jump on a call with you and just to kind of walk people through the process, what that's like, what they can expect, and to answer any preliminary questions they may have. Sometimes people don't necessarily have objections. They just don't know. If they've never gone through the process before, they've never experienced it, they have no idea what to expect. And so we don't want you to come in blind. That's the reason we've developed this free discovery call, because it gives you the chance to get some semblance of an idea as to what you can expect and have some questions answered. That's that component of it. Same is so with those who are just wanting styling help or how to put combinations together. All of that is the same. I will say this, and I told you that, I've told everyone that I come across that starts the custom or bespoke process, it is 110,000% absolutely unequivocal addicting. Do not, which camera? I'm gonna look at this camera. Do not start this process if you don't intend to keep it, because you will go to the ends. It's such, like you mentioned and alluded to, it being a different process. The way you feel is unlike any other. The way people respond to you is unlike any other. And you get used to that. You get addicted to that. And that's why I tell people, especially when guys come in, I look their wives, their fiancés, their girlfriend right in the face. I said, baby girl, I just met you today, but I want you to know your man is about to pick up a new addiction. I don't want anybody coming back to me and say, you didn't tell me, you didn't warn me. I'm telling you up front, it is 100%.
He's going to be looking great, phenomenal. I just want men, as we close, when it's time for bedtime, I wear pajamas. When I'm going out to dinner with my wife, I want her to feel that she's with someone special.
That's right.
When I'm going to church and I'm going to go ahead and praise the Lord, I want to give him my best. Now, if my best is a pair of jeans and a pair of Jordans, then that's what it's going to be.
Right.
But I want him to get my best.
Every time.
And when I'm with my daughter, I want people to know that's my girl and this is her dad.
Yes, yes.
So I want to represent for my family in every way possible.
There you go.
But thank you so much,
Thanks for having.
Cornelius,
Thanks for having.
for
Thanks for
coming out and having some Yamazaki here.
Amazing.
And
This is good stuff.
we'll be doing many more podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope that you've learned something today. And we're not here to offend anyone. We're here to help. And all the information on how to reach out to us will be below. And I pray that you've learned something today and that we could definitely help you. God bless and thank you.